long last, we're coming into the release cycle for Stranger Things Season 5, and my god, it is a long time coming, isn't it? I mean, who could have guessed that here would be 9 years after the release of the first season on Netflix, and that the show would become as big as it has? It's been such a long road to get here, but here we are, our first proper look. A teaser trailer that isn't just filled up with old clips of the previous seasons. We actually have some proper fresh content to start talking about, and people are hyped as all hell. This thing's getting major traction on social media, getting up to 10 million views in under 24 hours. The hype is real. Probably the biggest TV show event since the ending of Game of Thrones. Let's just hope that this time, they can stick the landing and be remembered for a top tier ending. Regardless though, there's nothing else for it but to jump into things and see what we can find. We start off the teaser with Steve in the back of a radio van, setting it up, I guess, to transmit a signal. Not really all that clear as to why he'd be doing that, but in the very next shot, the van drives off away from the radio station building, with what seems to be Lucas and Mike cycling behind it on their bikes, whilst Eleven, I think, sees them off outside. Meanwhile, we cut to the interior of what I expect is the radio station, where we see Will, Eleven, Joyce, Nancy, and Robin all sitting around, whilst Mike gives a countdown on the burn commencing. From all of this, it seems like they're spying on the military and what they're doing in regards to the Upside Down. Although that being said, I think a bunch of the scenes are likely spliced together to make this early section of the trailer, and it's not linear storytelling. Regardless, it seems likely that somebody's gotten a job at the radio station, likely Dustin, judging by the fact that he has a t-shirt with the radio logo in one of the stills, hence why they have access to all of this. They seem to be using it as some sort of mission control for monitoring what's going on, which seems fair enough. After all, isn't Hopper meant to be dead? And Eleven's meant to be a fugitive of the state. They have a vested interest in keeping an eye on things, plus they know that Vecna ain't dead, and he's going to come back with a vengeance at some point. And over the top of all this, we have that countdown, which I think is going to be from an early episode where the government still thinks they have everything under control, and that they just have to contain things for the time being. However, I think a lot of these clips, at least some, might be from episode 2 as opposed to episode 1, particularly when the lights are flickering. We historically know the lights would flicker when the Demogorgon was about to burst through an interdimensional portal and eat some poor bastard in his living room. And so, could this be Vecna in the Vanishing episode? I think the Vanishing is going to be Holly Wheeler to up the stakes quite a lot for the party, and plus she's been recast. So this could be that moment. However, when they're in the radio station, they already all look a bit shaken up, so maybe something bad has to have happened already. We also see an early clip here that Will, once again, is feeling the back of his neck. After all, that seems to be his major role in the story these days. When he's feeling his neck, I'm pretty sure he's at school, or at least out and about, and I don't think they're going to be going to classes after the Vanishing, so this has to be early on. Once you have a plot point that heavy, I think it would be a weird tone clash to have them keep going about their normal lives. I doubt we're going to have a slower build like the earlier seasons. Things are going to rapidly escalate because the reality is we're running out of time in the story, and they don't want to be bogged down in a slow burn slice of life tension build. I wonder what's going on with all those kids in the room with the bunk beds too. Are these kids that have been displaced by all the chaos? Were they orphaned, maybe? Perhaps kids that have been rounded up by the military for some reason? Are there going to be more kids that are developing powers now this gateway's well and truly opened? Lots of possibilities, but I don't think we have enough to go off just yet. There's also a shot of Hopper here, but I think that's from later on in the season. He seems to be waiting for something, and since we later see him with Eleven, I think it's probably something to do with that. The music then kicks in, and it's suitably epic and exciting. I love this shot of Will, Mike, and Lucas cycling past a military truck where there's choppers flying through the sky. It gives it a very dystopian war vibe. Same deal for the city centre being locked down and turned into what seems to be a military fortress, where they guard the gateway to the Upside Down and probably conduct their tests and burns to keep it at bay. Hopefully they've figured out that you can fight back against the Upside Down creatures with sonic blasts. To be honest, it would be kind of ridiculous if they weren't able to figure all that out and they just get slaughtered again and again. Also, speaking of the military, is the Russian subplot over now? Is that just done with? If not, how do we reckon they're going to tie that back into everything that's going on? Then it's over to the cemetery where Dustin's visiting the grave of Eddie Munson and finds that it's been spray painted with the message to burn in hell, since obviously the government's keeping the truth of the Upside Down hush hush, and thus everybody's in full satanic panic mode and still think he was a deranged serial killer sacrificing people for evil rituals. It's actually such a sad fate because I doubt that all of this is going to be exposed to the world at all. And so the public is never going to know that Eddie was ultimately innocent unless they do some creative editing to the story to reveal that Henry Creel was alive this whole time and had committed the true crimes. I hope they are able to do something like that, because otherwise, forevermore Eddie's going to be known as a murderer and a monster, when in actuality he died as a hero. Regardless, it does look like his death and the aftermath of that is going to be playing a lot into Dustin's storyline this season. To what extent? Who knows? It might just be some early stuff and then it gets dropped as the season starts to heat up. But I have faith it will remain relevant. I mean, geez, look how much influence Barb's death has had on the narrative and Nancy's personal arc. We get a look at Max in hospital with Lucas watching over her and holding her hand whilst crying. I do wonder how long Max is going to be unconscious in hospital for though. Is she going to wake up early in the season? Midway through? Maybe at the end of the first part? I mean, it would feel a bit strange to have her there only to keep her under for most of the story, considering what a big character she's become. It would be fine if it wasn't the final season, but it would be a massive shame if her final arc was just being unconscious for the whole time. That being said, I'm pretty eager to see what Lucas's role in the story is going to be, as it seems like he took a bit of a backseat for a very long time, at least compared to what he was in Season 1. There's a brief look at what I presume are two soldiers burning off at the gateway. We know that from Season 2 that fire really pisses off the creepy crawlies within the Upside Down. Remember what happened to the scientists and the soldiers in Season 2 when they got slaughtered by the demidogs? That was brutal, and it was framed as being a punishment more than anything else. I suspect this might also be earlier on, but I'm not too certain about that either. Next up, we have a clip of Hopper and Joyce alone in a bedroom, I think. She's stroking his arm a little and pulling at his shirt. Oh man, I ship this so hard. I need them to have some sort of happy ending and for them to be together. Preferably, they're already in a long-term relationship by the start of the season. I don't want any will they, won't they build to consume any more of the story, and they're so cute together. Here we come to some more high-stakes story developments. It seems that Steve, Dustin, Nancy, and Jonathan are going into the Upside Down, which gives me a bit of a sinking feeling to tell you the truth. The four of them are going in for some reason, perhaps in search of Holly, perhaps for some other reason that we are yet to ascertain. Regardless, just because the four of them go in, doesn't mean the four of them are going to come out again. If one of them does die as well, I honestly have no idea who it should be. I want them all to survive. I will say though, I've noticed a lot of people out there that seem to think that Jonathan's going to die this season, which I don't know if I'd go that far. I think he is at last going to have a more substantial role, more akin to the early seasons, but I wouldn't put him down as a certain death either. Part of me wonders if they're just going to swerve us all and have nobody important die, except for Vecna, of course, because everybody's expecting that somebody's going to get killed, and thus it's more shocking that everybody survives. Plus, since everybody's going into it thinking that somebody's going to bite it over the course of the season, it ups the tension and you have the audience at the edge of your seat no matter what you do. I could be wrong though. They might go full slash and go ham on the cast. I just don't think they will. I have a feeling they're going to pull a Return to the Jedi for this for the most part, and all the heroes are going to get out of things okay. Next up is a clip of the OG party putting their hands in the middle like the good old days, but Dustin's looking distant and hesitant, whilst the other three are staring at him looking worried. I'm thinking we're going to see in these early episodes just how much of an impact that Eddie's deaths had on Dustin. For so long, he was kind of the glue that was holding the party together, and now I'm starting to think he might be suffering from some real deeper issues and is pulling away from his friends. At least, that's the vibe I'm getting from the clip. Dustin really is primed to have one of the more interesting stories across the season, to tell you the truth. Super keen to see how things play out for him. We also see a clip of Mike and Eleven sitting together with Al in a wetsuit, probably getting ready for one of her psychic deep dives. Maybe they're hunting for Vecna? Maybe after Holly's been snatched. Something seems to have happened because Mike has a bruise on the side of his face. Seemingly took a hit at some point. Whilst these clips are all flying across the screen, we also have some voiceover from Jonathan talking about how after all they've been to, this thing, which I guess means the events of the show, ties them all together forever. He says this to Nancy, and they both seem pretty sad here. And I do wonder what the context is. I've seen a lot of speculation from all over the internet. Some people say it's a goodbye, some say it's a breakup, although I'm still not convinced with that either. It's sort of grey in the background, which I usually associate with the Upside Down, although maybe they're just out in the woods at night, as you do, because there are no spores in the air like there usually are in the Upside Down, as you see with Al in the next shot. Speaking of which, no idea what Al's up to in that shot, but she's certainly being a bit dramatic. Moving on, it looks like we're going to be getting some answers about Will and his long-term survival in the Upside Down. We see a Demogorgon chasing somebody up a tree, which if you look closely seems to be Season 1 Will in his puffer jacket. This scene seems to be filled with some extreme rule of cool though. I don't see the Demogorgon being a tree climbing type, more a knock down the tree type of creature. Also, Will making that jump just feels a bit fantastical, doesn't it? I mean, maybe he develops powers or something and then somehow forgets he has them, but that's unlikely, isn't it? I think maybe it's just meant to be a cool shot where he jumps between the trees, but I don't really like it. After this, we have a brief shot of some goons bursting into a room filled with red light, seemingly led by this lady. Yeah, I'm thinking this is going to be a lockdown situation. Either they're coming after members of the main group who have infiltrated the military base, or there's creatures from the Upside Down that have come through and are going to absolutely destroy these people. Hopper and Al are going to get another mission together, which we haven't seen since the end of Season 2, so that's going to be a lot of fun. I hope we get a lot of moments of the two of them outside of them fighting sci-fi monsters and soldiers though. I think their quiet father-daughter moments are always among the show's more powerful sequences, so here's hoping for more. It seems they're going to spend a lot of time together though. First up is them together looking at a big wall of nasty, upside-down, fleshy stuff, whilst later we see her screaming and clutching her head with her nose bleeding, and then collapsed on the ground with Hopper covering her, and then seemingly facing down a hail of bullets. I do wonder if this is a trailer misdirect. This kind of makes you assume she's killed a few of the soldiers using her powers, she's collapsed and is now being taken out. After all, the soldiers are firing, there's a bunch of bodies in the background. Is that going to be the case though? Or is this a case of spliced scenes? I guess they could still be hunting her, but I'm just not sure. Maybe it's a three-way fight. Upside Down versus soldiers versus Alan Hop. There's a shot of almost a gateway in the sky opening up with, I think, Nancy and Jonathan looking up at it. It kind of reminds me of when the big fissure into the Upside Down opened at the end of Season 4. Really curious as to what's happening here. There's then a shot of Dustin and Steve in a car, and Dustin is looking a little worse for wear. Obviously someone's beaten this kid up. Maybe the same person that hit Mike, because surely they didn't brawl. And if they did, surely Dustin wouldn't be so comparatively destroyed, right? I'm thinking that Dustin's going to get into an altercation with somebody who's talking shit about Eddie at some point, and obviously, with him being a not very athletic D&D nerd, he's going to get his shit rocked and ends up looking like Steve at the end of each season. Maybe his friends tried to jump in and also took some punches. I'm thinking that maybe Vecna at some point is sending out the demidogs to come and kill Max. Lucas obviously takes her from the hospital, and they end up in this Jurassic Park-inspired hide-and-seek sequence with somebody else. Who do we reckon that is? And how likely is it that they're just going to get chomped at some point to up the tension? Although, red hair, is that her mum? Is it meant to be Vicky? It would be a bit weird for her to be there in this section, but I suppose it could be her. Or is it just some random? Although there are meant to be additional kids this season, right? Younger ones? Maybe it's one of them. I'm just spitballing, really. Mostly I just love the Jurassic Park reference. We then see Steve driving himself, Nancy, Dustin, and Jonathan into the Upside Down, or out of the Upside Down, I guess, but I presume they're going in, and likely they have to make haste, hence why they're using a car. We get a shot of Joyce holding up an axe as the Demogorgon bashes down a barn door where she's standing in front of Will, I think Robin, and then the kid we've seen in the prior stills. I think his name's Turnbow or something. Like the episode The Turnbow Trap. I think they're trying to trap the Demogorgon for reasons, maybe to try and physically tap into its mind to find Holly. I mean, it feels like it's got to be a trap, right? Otherwise, you'd think they'd be running away from it a bit better. Immediately after this, we cut to Will passing out and hitting his head hard. I wonder what this is. Is he getting possessed again? There's been a lot of chatter about Will potentially getting his own powers though, and that this might be his awakening. The final shot of the teaser is Vecna seemingly facing down fire. Could that be Will's power? He always played the wizard in the D&D party and they have that whole fireball motif with his character. Could he become a fire mutant? That'd be pretty cool. Nancy's then back with her shotgun again. This is seemingly becoming her go-to role for the story these days. Carry the big gun to shoot Vecna and his goons in the face. Still a lot more teaser left though, when we see the Demogorgon chasing a truck and leaping onto the back. I wonder what this is going to be. Is it hunting them? Will this be them trying to lead it into a trap? Maybe this is just showing it killing off some random like they sometimes do. Either way, I'm really glad to see the Demogorgon back in Hawkins. That was probably the best villain the show's ever had in terms of presence and fear factor. Having it stalk through the town chasing them is going to be great. We also see Holly and Karen hiding in a bathtub under the water whilst the lights are flickering. Yeah, so I'm thinking that this is going to be the abduction of Holly, and since we also see a shot of Nancy frantically washing her bloodstained hands in the real world, so not the Upside Down, I'm wondering if maybe Karen or Ted or both get attacked and left for dead, or maybe just straight up killed whilst it takes Holly away. That's certainly one way to up the stakes. I figured it wouldn't be her with Steve or Jonathan's blood, as most of the stuff we've seen with them is in the Upside Down. The more I'm thinking about it, the more certain I am that a Wheeler is absolutely finished. It's the vanishing of one person. Not two, not three. Vecna takes no prisoners, and I could see him wanting to punish Nancy here. There's an ominous shot of Robin staring up at the radio tower, which is swirling with what seems to be those Mind Flayer particles. There's a close-up of Will, and then a shot of Dustin and Steve having a very intense brotherly hug. I tell you what, if Steve dies, then surely there's no way back for Dustin, right? This is him after Eddie's death. What would happen if the eternal bro Steve died? I think this is him being triggered by something, maybe Steve almost getting killed or being in danger. Man, I can already feel those feels. Al and Hopper make their way into a lab of some kind, and Al seems to be getting into one of those full dive suits for the immersion experience. Hopper says let's end this beforehand, so maybe this is for the final showdown, hunting Vecna. Then things get a bit more rapid fire. We see Hopper tossing grenades, probably to blast their way out after the soldiers attack them. Will looks like he's being eaten or something equally horrifying. That's something the show's always managed so well. It can just be so unsettling at times. We see Holly probably just as she's getting kidnapped. We see Lucas on the ground afraid with blood on him. Murray and Robin are teaming up. And here they have that truck that the Demogorgon was chasing earlier on in the trailer. So yeah, it's not some random thing. It's going to be all of them. They're leading it into a trap. I do wonder why it's chasing them though. Is it trying to get Will, the random kid? We have soldiers running through the woods, probably chasing Al, I'd guess. Then we see Nancy and Al and Nancy's shotgun in the Wheeler house. And Nancy has on the jumper that she's wearing when she's washing the blood off her hands, and a jacket over the top of it. Maybe she takes off the jacket to try to stop some bleeding? More and more I'm thinking we're seeing some dead parents, or at least a dead parent in the house. After all, her and Al are looking at something too, and they look shocked. I figure that whoever takes Holly is going to be gone, because it's called the vanishing, not the abduction, so they might be looking at a mangled corpse. We then have a couple of things that I'm not too sure on. Is this a flashback to them running in the tunnels, or is this new tunnels? We then have Erica in a syringe, Al doing some superhero moves, which looks pretty awesome. And then the Demogorgon doing the same, before we get a look at Vecna, who seems to be staring down Mike, Joyce, and a bunch of randoms. But honestly, that's probably classic Hollywood splicing of multiple scenes together. And I gotta say, oh my god, this trailer is the definition of hype. How the hell am I going to wait until November? I need this now. Plus, we got some stills, most of which were supplementary stuff of the same scenes, but it did show us some new stuff as well. There's going to be a Will and Robin scene, which should be fun because I feel like their personalities are really polar opposites. We see Erica in school, which I figure is just going to be a short little scene. Al uses her blindfold tracking thing in the Upside Down, which feels very risky, but she has her walkie-talkie, so I guess this is part of a plan. We also see Mike and Lucas on bikes, and it's the return of Headband Lucas. Hell yeah, perfect way to finish off. My god, this is going to be an all-timer for a show if they can pull this off. The hype is real, and I'm ready for Season 5. And so with all that being said, these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the teaser for Stranger Things Season 5? Do you think it looks any good? Are you hyped for the release? Maybe not? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.